Hi guys, Andy here. I'll start off by saying excuse my throat. I've got a bit of a cold, bit of a cough, so if I have to clear my throat now and then, please do forgive me. So, a common question that I get asked in the comments of a lot of my videos is, should I buy this phone or that phone? And most of the time, unless it's glaringly obvious, I say, I can't really answer that for you because I don't know what's important to each individual user. So that inspired me to do a bit of a survey to see what do people think are the important factors when buying a phone, which I put out there. I put out on social media and got 183 responses. At some point I'm thinking of trying to set up some kind of, I don't know, like a database where you put in the different gradings for the phone, like, I don't know, like battery and like screen and like camera quality. Then when you fill out the survey, it basically tailors the phone's score to what you find important. So I don't know, if you put Valuus really high, the OnePlus 3, for example, would gain a bit, whereas the Pixel maybe would come down a bit. One day, maybe, if I can figure out how to do it. I did miss some really important questions. I was annoyed with myself that I hadn't thought of IP rating, for example. You know, the Pixel, again, one of the phones that's kind of mentioned it's not waterproof. I'm not buying that. And I just wondered how many people do find things that important. A couple of other bits, the smaller ones perhaps. So I will do the survey again, probably early part of next year, to include those answers and maybe to see how it'll be interesting to see how things change in time as well. So let's get straight to the responses. We'll switch to my screen. I'll just kind of talk through the bar graphs that Google provides. Let's start things off with value. Generally, you got to say actually that's not that big a factor. Kind of surprising, I suppose, in some ways, but people are prepared to pay for the better device, I guess. Onto design. Very few people put it as a 5, but loads of people have it as a 4. I guess as long as it's not ugly is what we're saying here. Size and weight, fairly simple one. We're edging towards the big, but not the ridiculous. Screen, 83% of people have that as in the positive side of things, 4 or 5. So clearly an important factor for people. Also, internal specs. I think neither of these two particularly a surprise. So internal specs, 82.5% positive. I suppose in some ways people are always saying, oh, you shouldn't get hung up on specs, this and that. But actually, people clearly do, myself included. You know, I want something with some high-end specs to it. But surely the more important factor is fluidity, which you could say leads on from the internal specs, but I think there's a lot of other things involved, obviously, including like kind of the operating system and free from bloat and enough RAM and the specs and such. But this has the most important factor. 105 respondents said that it was a 5, 57.4%. No other answer, no other number, no other pillar, column is as high as that. Fluidity is the main driver, apparently, based on this survey of 183 responses. Battery life is probably the second highest. Well, I mean, it's the highest positive overall, 86.4% on the positive side. So I guess that's not too surprising. Only 3.2% on the negative side. But clearly a huge factor battery life. So those two that we're looking at on screen, if you can make a nice, slick, fluid phone with amazing battery life, you are onto a winner. For removable battery, which is interesting because with battery life having the highest positive, there's a pretty high, I really couldn't give a monkeys to it. 41.5% really couldn't care if it's got a removable battery or not. Which is interesting because a lot of people sort of whinge on about how that's become less of a common thing, the removable battery, but actually most people in the end don't care. So that's clearly why manufacturers are going that route. If it means they can get a slimmer phone and actually they're not going to lose many sales, then why not? Which leads us on to the micro SD card slot. Another thing that you say, you hear a lot of people say, well, it's because the micro SD card slot's gone. But actually that's the most spread answer or set of answers that we have in this survey, with the lowest high, if that makes sense, at 24%. And actually the highest part of micro SD card slot is that people don't care. But it's interesting that the second highest answer is it's vital, basically. So it is a bit of a... That is an interesting one. It doesn't massively surprise me. I can't remember mine. I think I was somewhere in them. I was probably a 3, maybe even a 2. I've never been that concerned by a micro SD card slot. I'm not alone, apparently. But yeah, that's a very interesting answer. Camera quality, always being bleated on about as being very important, and I guess that does back it up. Quite the vast majority over on the positive side. Camera megapixels, I'll probably take this out of the next one, to be honest. It's not that, I mean, as you can see, most people kind of like, as long as it's reasonable. You don't want something with a 5 megapixel rear facing, but I think it kind of says that if something's got a 20 megapixel and something's got a 13 megapixel, I'm not massively bothered. I'm happy enough with 13. The loudspeaker, this one surprised me a little bit. To me, it's important. I use it every day, but I thought there'd be more of a negative response than that, and actually, that's a fairly even spread. 73.8% are spread across the 2, the 3, and the 4. Of people kind of going, I'd like it to be reasonable, but it's not, wouldn't stop me buying a phone. Hackability, 46.4%, couldn't care less. The highest amounts of 1s. And then you wonder, why did Google stop doing the Nexus lines? That's what the hackers use. That's what the developers use. Well, because most people couldn't give a monkeys. Interesting. Software and OS, quite a high one at 51.4% on the 5. Clearly very important to people. Clearly, there's not many that kind of go, I'm not really bothered. OS update speed. Now, I actually thought this would be higher in the 4s and the 5s. I mean, it's generally positive, 62.9 on the 4 and the 5, but I don't know, I guess with the way people talk about updates, I thought we'd have a much higher, those two and not some, 6% of people couldn't give monkeys about updates and update speed. Quite interesting, that one, I thought. Protected, I'll probably take this out of the next one as well. It's a bit of a sort of a spread. I mean, more people do say they want to be protected, but there's also quite a lot that kind of like, I'm fine by myself sort of thing. I'll work it all out. Wireless charging, quite an interesting one, because I know some people that find it quite important. I thought I would miss it when I lost it, but actually only 16% have it as a 4 or a 5. The biggest 3 vote at 42% makes it kind of it's a nice if it has it, but I wouldn't not buy a phone because of it. Which then brings us on to NFC, which is quite a similar sort of response, really. The second lowest high at 25.3, which granted is in the I'm really not bothered. And only 36.2% are in the positive. I thought with sort of Android Pay and Apple Pay and and the sort of the actual practical uses these days of having NFC, I did think that would be a much higher positive. As it goes, generally there's quite a spread of, it's a sort of type response. So, as I said, there will be another one next year. If you missed out on this one, probably best thing to do is to follow me on various different social medias, at AndyCR15 on Twitter. Follow Android Andy UK in Google Plus, or circle me up, I should say. And when I'm doing the next one, probably early part of next year, maybe, because I'll add in those ones that I've missed. I'll let you know on there. But for now, I hope you found this interesting. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. My name's Andy. I'll catch you all again soon.